Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 174 of the Dynasty Junkies, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network, or the DAP Network, if you will. And I will. Maybe Rocky will. We did. So, as you probably already heard, I did say this is Andrew Hall at Andrew Hall FF. With me in the side seat tonight, co-hosting with us is the one and only Rocky Petrella. How you doing tonight, Rocky?
Doing good, Andrew. Happy to be back again. Excited to talk some rookies tonight with our great guests that we have, and doing second show in a row. First time in a while I've done two shows in a row, and happy to be here with you.
I know you've been taking over a lot of the main chair section on Trade Addicts, and I've been on that a couple of times, and I'm always happy to join and talk about that stuff with you. So it'll be nice to be the second chair on this one and to kind of follow along. Should be a little lighter lift for you. Hopefully we can make this easy on you.
Yep. Sounds good.
And like we said, too, we're going to be doing a lot of listening because we've got the one and only John Lobb on the show tonight. How you doing tonight, John?
I'm doing great. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on. You guys were the first ones this year to reach out for me for the upcoming rookie season. I think I've been speaking with Andrew on X now. I got to remember not to call Twitter on X now since about late January. So I've been looking forward to tonight. I mean, I now really know when Andrew first contacted me, I was probably 35 rookies deep into the research at that time. Now I've got over 75, 80 in my belt. I got about 5 more I might be interested in, but I really know the rookies now. So it's a great time to discuss the upcoming draft, especially for Dynasty Leaguers.
Yeah, no, this is exactly why I wanted to get you on. We were talking before we started recording too. You and I have not been on the same podcast together, but I feel like maybe we were on like the Podathon right after each other or something. I feel like we've interacted a little bit, maybe.
Andrew, it might be the Podathon.
Yeah.
I think you were one of the hosts on one of my episodes. That's where I was trying. I was racking my brain. I know Andrew, but I could not, and I remember I had never been on Dynasty Junkies. So I was like, how do I know Andrew? That's it. It's the Podathon.
I knew we'd figure it out. I knew we'd come together and figure it out. But again, I'm pretty sure I met you in Canton at least once, one of the last expos too. Obviously, you're big in the Debbie space. You're big in the college fantasy space. And so again, when I was kind of putting together some guests, I'm like, who I haven't talked to in a minute is John Lobb. I know you've always got a ton of energy. And if people aren't familiar with you, what's going on in your world, or where can people find your stuff right now?
Sure. So I had been at Football Diehards for over a decade. This is my 11th year doing rookie scouting reports. And for the first year, there's been change. So I'm now at playerprofiler.com. So I really enjoy that. And they are a great team. They reached out to me. We had some great discussions. So I'm over there. And that's where my written stuff is. And I go on a lot of their shows and stuff and do mock drafts with them and have my rankings. And then I have my video show on the Rookie Big Board on YouTube channel. That's with my teammate, Matt Hicks. This is our 5th year doing the video series. And we kind of look at each prospect holistically. What we're looking at is their analytical value or what the analytical models tell us. We're looking at the film study, what we saw when we watched them and break them down, and then ultimately what we believe their fantasy value will be in more dynasty aspect leagues.
I love it. And I'm glad that you're doing this for so long. You've been doing this fantasy content creation for as long as some people play Dynasty, right? Like you've been in this game a long time. You've been following the college stuff for a long time, and you're one of the people that I tend to look to be like, all right, well, let's separate the noise from the signal. Let's figure out what's important and what's not. So that's kind of what we'll be talking about when we get into that in a little bit. I know, too, with the player profiler, I'm sure you've got a whole bunch of new stuff to talk about, new angles on that thing there. But before we get into that, I do want to bring up any news, any topics that have kind of come to mind. It's been a couple of weeks since we had a show. Rocky, I know you were on 2 weeks ago, I should say, with Tommy. The last 2 weeks were a little interesting in terms of the NFL. We had a lot of free agency signings. We're not necessarily a news show, so I'm not going to get too deep into that. But was there any signings, Rocky, that you might have that stand out, I guess, or that caused you to take some actionable, advice or tactics in your leagues? Or was it just kind of like, hey, it's free agency. It's just what it always is?
I mean, this one's pretty obvious, but it is one that I haven't been able to get anything done yet. But the Kirk Cousins to Atlanta move, not acquiring Cousins because I already have a crap load of Cousins, as you probably know. But it's got me more. been throwing out offers for London and Pitts. I was never a big London guy, but I feel like he's done pretty well with what he's had to work with there with Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder. And I feel like I was a little wrong on him coming out. I'm a little higher on him even before the quarterback change. And now I can just see really good things there. So I am definitely more interested in Drake London than I used to be. And I do think we could finally see what we're hoping for from Pitts.
No, I like that. I'm the same way. I've been trying to acquire London and Pitts too. John, you on the same page there?
Well, I wanted to jump in for half a second. You had mentioned Debbie, and you know, I've obviously liked Drake London now with the quarterback change. I mean, just getting rid of Arthur Smith makes London more valuable, let alone, I mean, I'm sorry, Arthur Smith just coordinated a terrible offense in Atlanta. I know it was a successful offense in Tennessee. I get it, but it was not very successful in Atlanta from a fantasy standpoint. But it was just making me spark the memory. We were talking, I love Debbie. And I remember the summer before Drake London came out, I was a huge Drake London guy. And the criticism at the time was that he had played too much slot for the USC Trojans. And I said, the problem at the time is they had this guy named Amon-Ra St. Brown playing the X. And I remember the argument, a lot of people didn't like Amon St. Brown, and I did. I thought he was way undervalued in dynasty leagues. Now, he has even exceeded my expectations. I knew he'd be good. I didn't think he'd be top 5. You know, that's just amazing what he's done. All the props to him. But I was way higher than most. And I said, what's going to be interesting, why I love Drake London in the slot. I love the film. Let's see what he does. And what happens? The Trojan staff was smart. They watched the same film I did. They're smarter than me. They said, let's put this big man out at the X. And that year, they were peppering him. There were games where he was like 12 targets, 15 targets, 13 targets, 12 targets. I mean, just the total alpha male. I believe we have an opportunity to see that now. And if you really think about it, he's younger than there are wide receivers in this draft coming out. I believe he's still only 22. He only played 3 years at USC, folks. He came out of the draft, I think, at 20. I mean, we are talking about a man with, 2 years NFL experience, and he's coming in now where you hope you have rational coaching, right? Just you got to give the man 135, 140 targets. If you're a smart coach, that's just going to happen this year. So I love Drake London this year.
To your point, I looked it up while you were talking. He won't turn 23 until July. So
that's crazy. I mean, there's a bunch of prospects who are 23, 24 at wide receiver. Now they're not the elite, they're not the top, but they will be drafted in this draft class.
Well, and I think
he's still younger than Velus Jones was. It came out a couple of years ago. It was old when he came out. Yeah,
he's younger than Jaden Daniels. He's younger than Blake Corum. He's younger than Xavier Legette. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's younger than a lot of these guys in this draft that are going to be fantasy relevant. Like, that's a great point. I think he's as soon as he got out from under Arthur Smith, I was excited. You know, I was like, I don't care who the quarterback's going to be, because it's not going to be any worse. And then, of course, the Cousins addition makes it like a double count almost, where people are like excited about London because he's not, trapped anymore. And then he gets double counted because now he's got an actual quarterback. So it could be hard to acquire him, Rocky, but I'm with you on that same logic. John, was there anyone else from this free agency kind of whirlwind that we had for the first couple of weeks there? Was there anybody else in there that you're, taking to heart in your own dynasty leagues?
I don't know if this is low-hanging fruit, but I'm going to go there. I love Saquon Barkley. I think he's in the perfect spot. Now, maybe I have I might have images of that rookie season dancing in my head, but I still think the talent is there. He was good with the Giants. The Giants had what did they have? A bottom 5 offensive line. And let me just say this once again. They were playing Tommy DeVito at quarterback, people. Let me just explain what that means. Tommy DeVito should not have been in the NFL. So the fact that Barkley was at all as good as he was, I think he's going to be so good this year. I think he's only 27 by the time the season kicks off. So he should have 2 more years. So I don't know if it's low hanging, but I think this is just great for fantasy and for the young man.
Yeah, I love the Barkley signing. I'm an Eagles fan. And the money, they don't generally. I was saying all along, I didn't think they were going to. There was rumors about Barkley even before free agency started. And I didn't think the Eagles were going to do it because Howie never invests in running back. With the amount of guaranteed money they gave him, they are going to use him.
They are.
Yeah, a lot more so. I don't think they're going to be splitting time the way they have in recent years.
My 2 best friends are Eagle fans.
Yes,
and they're like, John, do you think they're still going to play Kenneth Gainwell 40%? I'm like, no way.
And I know people are worried about the tush push, but I have a feeling that's not going to work as well with Jason Kelce.
Without Jason Kelce.
Yeah, and. It's still, I mean, there's going to be plenty of opportunities inside the 5, inside the 10, even if, as long as they're not right at the 1, I'm sure they'll be giving it to Barkley a lot of those times. And he's going to score. I think he's going to score significantly more touchdowns. He had like 6 touchdowns with the Giants last year. He still had a very good year. And I think he's probably going to at least double that total.
I think it's fair to project 12 touchdowns and 50 catches.
Yep.
And if he gets that, with just his regular 200 carries, that's gold. That's gold. I mean, and he could have more, but I'll take that. I'll take 12 touchdowns and 50 catches.
Yeah. Well, and I think too the low-hanging fruit, like you're talking about, like that's not low-hanging fruit at all. I think that's a lot of people I think are overlooking Barkley, thinking he's washed in all this. I still think he's got a lot left in the tank. And I think that whole offense
I don't think
is
he's washed. I don't think people understand how bad the Giants were. Like, I really don't think they understand how bad the Giants were.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the only one that I'll bring up was the Tony Pollard to Tennessee signing made me really want Tyjae Spears. I just feel like Spears was someone I wanted anyway with Derrick Henry leaving town. And I do like Derrick Henry a lot in Baltimore, even though now I have to face him. I really like that for Dynasty. I think he's going to get a lot of run. I think the price went up for him and all that. I think the price went down for Spears, and there's a very high likelihood that Spears is the 1A and Pollard is the 1B. So I think that this is, again, I'm always trying to see where can I acquire on the dip in a sense. Who do I think is being undervalued? And for me, I think that's still Spears right now. Nothing against Barkley, nothing against London or Pitts or any of that. Like I try to acquire guys that are maybe being undervalued by the market so I can try to pounce. And that's kind of the one that comes to my mind.
I think it's a good call, Andrew, because I think anybody, like I know some people were upset when they saw Pollard, signed a big contract with Tennessee. Anybody who thought Tyjae Spears was going to have like a clear lead role was kidding themselves. That was never going to happen. But I think having Pollard be the one that comes in is great because neither of these guys is a guy that can carry the load. It's not like they brought in like, Josh Jacobs or something like that. That would have been a lot worse. So I think you're going to see at worst an even split between the two, and Spears' price has only gone down after what happened with Pollard coming in. So yeah, I think that's a good call.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I like Tyjae Spears coming out. Loved him at Tulane. One of my favorite college players for his last 2 years in Tulane. I think it's a buying opportunity. You have to understand you're probably buying a rotational back right now with some upside. And it might be 52-48 split in that backfield. I mean, it's not like Pollard is going to go out and get 65% of the snaps. He's just not built that way. Dallas proved it, right? Like they tried, it didn't work. And the Cowboys gave up. I mean, essentially, think about it. The Cowboys gave him up in 1 year. I mean, they just felt he can't be the guy for 220 carries and 45, 50 receptions.
Yeah. So now he's going to be the guy and Spears is nothing. No, I completely agree. And I think that there's a high likelihood that we do see a true split, which is as frustrating as that is. I think Spears is still RB2 ready. So it'll be great. Other than that, I don't really want to get too deep in the news. I mean, free agency has been talked about to death, I feel like, at this point.
Look, I had one other guy I was going to mention.
Go ahead.
I was actually more curious just to kind of get your guys' takes on it because I think we talked a little bit on Trade Addicts, but What do you think of the whole Field situation? Where do you see his career going from here? Do you think he starts this year? Do you think he becomes Pittsburgh starter in 25? Do you still have hope for Fields? I'm just curious.
I'll go first and just say, yeah, go ahead, John.
No, I have total hopes for Fields. I think Mike Tomlin pulled a nasty, sneaky one here. Look at play Russell Wilson. He's not your long-term solution. He just is not. But Russell Wilson could win 10, 11 games for Pittsburgh. Then you put Justin Fields in 2025. Just let the young man learn. The one thing he's never had was consistency. Hasn't he gone through 3 offensive coordinators and 2 head coaches since he's joined Chicago? Well, the one thing we can almost guarantee in Pittsburgh is consistency. Let Justin Fields sit, relax, learn, understand the game. Let the game come to him. The talent is still there. The arm strength's there. The legs are there. The athleticism in there. Maybe Russell Wilson can help him speed up the game a little bit from reading the defenses. Hey, if you could get Justin Fields for a 4th-round dynasty pick, I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but I'd grab him in a second.
No,
so
I would do for sure, especially for a 4th. My goodness.
Yeah. I was just going to say, let Russ cook and let Justin simmer.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. I like that. Yeah, that's a smart one. And just to kind of add some other 2 cents to that, I'm 100% with you, John. I think Fields is the guy that I want long-term there. I don't think Russell's really the answer. And I even tweeted this out earlier this week, or X'd this out. I don't know. I still say tweeted. I tweeted this out earlier this week where I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Like, I would laugh really hard if Fields outscores Russ this year. I still think it's possible. I just think that there's going to be a point where they're going to have to make a switch, or Russ gets hurt, or something happens. And Fields is like, you know what? I got to show this. I got to do what I can. And I still think he's got that dog in him, right? Like, he's still going to go out there and get it done. Fields isn't trash. And I don't know exactly where everybody starts thinking that. And I kind of feel like it's the situation that he was in was not ideal. I'm not going to blame it all on that, but I do think it's a little bit of both, which makes me think that changing one might help the other. So it couldn't be worse than where he was. That's for sure. But again, I also don't blame the Bears for making that move, right?
And I don't know if you can get him for a 4th, but I don't mind throwing a late 2nd at him, even if you have to wait a whole year. Like, you may be waiting a whole year or longer or never for that late 2nd. So why not try? And the upside could be humongous.
Well, yeah, and it could be one of those things too, where depending on who's got him, they might have other quarterbacks or made other moves or have rookie picks that they, Fields might be their 4th quarterback, and then maybe something like the 310 is on the clock and somebody's there that they want. Maybe that could pull it off. You never know, right? I think sending offers for Fields right now is probably a good idea. And same with Spears. And those are kind of guys that I'm trying to get. So that's actually a really good point there too, Rocky. I like that. So before we get into our main topic of the night, I do want to spend a second here to talk about not necessarily a sponsor, but something that we want to talk about is SundayDreamersClub.com, DAP Network's own Casey Kasem's new venture. Use code DAP15 at checkout to get 15% off. I've got a couple of these shirts already. I'm definitely going to be buying more. Terrific quality, just terrific service. And again, Casey is one of the best in the business. So if you haven't heard any of her Get Real podcast, I highly recommend checking that out. And then before you come to the expo in August, go buy yourself a shirt at SundayDreamersClub.com. Use code DAP15 to get 15% off. All right. So thanks so much for that, Casey. Let's get into the main topic tonight. And obviously, John, we brought you on because you're one of the, and I don't want to say few, one of the many rookie gurus that I tend to look to for advice and to kind of weed out what's good and what's bad in the world. And so I thought we'd have you on to talk a little bit about process and a little bit about players. I thought maybe we could kind of do both at the same time. We're right in that time of year where we're really gearing up for rookie drafts. We're moving toward the NFL draft and having landing spots and draft capital all figured out for us. But before we have that, I always feel like, well, let's figure out the how before we figure out the who. And again, I love some of your process. I love some of your scouting. You're big in college. You don't do this once in a while. This is your whole thing. And I was like, I gotta talk to John about some of this. I gotta pick your brain. So the first question here on the show sheet is something that I've been thinking about. But which data or what data is important to you when evaluating rookies and what is not? Ultimately, like, help us get better at evaluating rookies. What data is meaningful when we do that?
So I'll start at the quarterback position. And I know. I seem to find something interesting on X. Wow, how weird is this stay at? Dynasty X now. Is that the
Yeah,
right
not
X
Dynasty Twitter. Yeah.
I'm not. It used to be Twitter Dynasty, but now I don't know what we should call X Dynasty. And I see people throwing up their hands. The no model, there's no way to predict the quarterback. Okay. I do see that historically. But let me put a caveat in it. It's our job to get better, even if we can't successfully hit 90% accuracy. I've been watching football for 45 years. Let me tell you, 45 years. The first draft I saw on live TV was 1985. The quarterback position has always been difficult to evaluate. Nothing's changed. It's still about a 50-50 hit rate in the first round, right? I mean, that was true back in 1979, and it is true now. Like, I look back, my first real draft I remember is Phil Simms went in the first round to the New York Giants. I dare anyone to name the school that Phil Simms went to. It doesn't even exist right now. He wasn't a Division I. It wasn't like he was at an elite Power 5 program. There's no such thing as Power 5 back then. Phil Simms made it. Then you had guys from Penn State. Todd Blackledge won a national champion. Saw him every day, every Saturday at the end of the year for Penn State on national TV and was a total bust. This has been true for 45 years. So what really bothers me is when people say, I can't find a model I want to give up. No, that's not your job. You can't give up. You can't give up. You can't resign yourself to saying, I can't predict this position. And you must separate the prospect from the results. We have no control over the results. I'm not in the huddle. I'm not on the team. I'm not at training camp.
You're not making the plays. Yep, exactly.
There's nothing. You have to look at the prospect. And I think there's something that we're all missing. We want to give too much credit to the quarterback. What we've got to do is understand the value of the culture and the organization in which the prospect is placed in. Do you really believe Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes if he lands with the Arizona Cardinals or New York Jets? Does anyone in their heart really believe he's going to win 3 Super Bowls if he's a New York Jet and an Arizona Cardinal? Because if you do, I want some of what you're smoking. I really want what you're smoking, okay?
Hey, you never know. Come on.
But that's our obsession with the individual and not placing the player in the social context. Now, this is NFL. The quarterback is, to an extent, especially when he's young, beholden to the people around him. If he doesn't have the coaching in place, if he doesn't have some people on offense that can help him, if he doesn't have a defense that can win him games. Hey, let's just look at the absurdity of Mark Sanchez going to 2 AFC championship games. Wasn't because of Mark Sanchez. Nope. He landed in an ideal spot. That Rex Ryan and that Jets defense was simply unbelievable. And what did Rex do? He hit his quarterback. Hand the ball off. Get some first downs. Don't hurt my defense and we'll punt. He got the 2 AFC championship games. 2.
Yeah, that's Joe 2 more Flacco. Than Andy Dalton. Yeah.
Joe Flacco lands in Baltimore, coming out of Delaware.
Yeah.
I think he made the playoffs his first 5 years in the NFL. Got to a Super Bowl, got to 4 AFC championship games. Yep. Was Joe Flacco really that good? Or did he land in the goddamn gold mine of an organization. Do any of you in your hearts believe if he's with the Arizona Cardinals, he's going to 5 NFC championship games?
Nope.
No.
So we need to analyze the prospect, and then where does that young man land, and what does the organization do? Let's just go back to Justin Fields.
Well, wait 1 second though, John, just so I understand. Are you saying more like the prospect matters, but the landing spot matters more? Like, is that kind of what you're saying? Like
for the quarterback, yes.
Okay.
And
Just
I'm
wanna
not
make sure.
talking winning. It's what is the organizational structure? So look at what Justin Field lands in. A terrible offensive system. They had their question marks about him. The coach didn't want him. Pulls him in and out of the lineup his freshman year for Mitch Trubisky. Wasn't that the Mitch Trubisky?
Yeah,
team?
I think so.
What?
Yeah.
All right. Then they switch coaches and bring in a defensive guy.
Right.
Oh, what a better way to raise a quarterback than to bring in a defensive guy. And they pull him a couple times. He has some unfortunate injuries. They don't know how to coach him out of his sack. I don't know if it is. That's an interesting question. But he definitely takes too many sacks. So they're not helping him in that regard by any stretch of the imagination. Why is the ball in his hand so long? What's going on? When was the last time you saw a quick screen? What the hell's going on in Chicago?
Yeah, right.
Like, you're having the man take 5-step drops when he doesn't like to get the ball out of his hands? Come on, man. Play to the quarterback's strengths. Look at Patrick Mahomes. Sits behind Alex Smith. Andy Reid doesn't even sniff him in the game. He doesn't set a uniform until they've clinched the playoffs. They go to Denver in a meaningless Week 18 game. His rookie year, he drops Patrick Mahomes in a game. He's successful. And then what does? He jettisons Alex Smith. No games. No playing. Mr. Smith, get out of here. We love you. You did great. It's a cold, hard business. Patrick, you're my guy. Oh, and by the way, we have a Hall of Fame tight end. Just in case you don't know.
Right.
Please.
And just so that
great offensive line.
Because you mentioned this, the Justin Fields rookie year was actually with Andy Dalton, who I mentioned before. Right, which is even worse if you think about it. Like Fields had 12 games, Dalton had 8 because they kind of had somewhere they were in together. Their fantasy points per game, and I'm not counting PPR because they're quarterbacks, 0.1 per game different with Justin Fields 10.6, Dalton 10.5. They were both bad. Right. And so I think that, that's more of a system issue. I totally hear what you're saying. That was his rookie year. That's the most formative year, right? So then you go to 22 when Dalton was gone by then. Then you have Fields splitting time with Peterman, Simeon, and Boyle. Remember that mess for fantasy? Like you never know which one was going to be the guy. So and then of course you go to 30 or 23, and he started a lot of the year, but Tyson Bagent came out of nowhere and was kind of the clog in the roster. So I hear what you're saying too. It's like it's not all Fields. Does that make you worried about Caleb Williams then in Chicago?
No, because I think the Bears, I'll give them credit. Now, I don't know if the head coach is right, but the GM has learned from his mistakes. The GM says, we screwed Justin Fields. So what do I have to do? I've got to get people around him. He brings in DeAndre Swift. Wow. That changes the whole dynamic of the backfield. Now you got Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert as your second and third running backs. Hey, yum. That's
I like
really
that.
good,
Yeah.
right? Then what do? You bring what receiver did they bring, and why am I going blank? I know
Keenan Allen?
What?
Wasn't it Keenan Allen they brought in?
Yes, they bring in Keenan Allen. Guys, they have the number 9 pick in the draft. You either get him an offensive lineman or you get him Rome Odunze. He can't lose with either of those two guys. If Odunze's off the clock or off the table, you get him the offensive lineman, then you draft a wide receiver in round 2. There's going to be a wide receiver on the board.
Yep.
So you get the veteran presence with Keenan Allen who knows what he's doing. You still got the stud in TJ or Moore. You got a tight end. He's not great, but Greg Olson's a serviceable NFL two-way tight end. He blocks, he catches, he does what you need to do at tight end. Then you get him someone up. Look at, they're dropping Williams into a better organization with talent around him. And you know what you do? You have a little book on you and says Caleb doesn't throw the ball more than 28 times. And every time you turn that playbook, you say Caleb does not throw the ball more than 28 times. You turn to the next sheet, Caleb does not throw more than 28 times.
Right.
You control his errors. You allow him to function the best he can, and he will be successful.
I like that.
Look at Russell Wilson in Seattle. We've seen Russell Wilson without a coach who let him cook. Wilson can't cook. He's not the chef. People gave that credit to Wilson. That was the Legion of Boom. And that was Marshawn Lynch. Russell Wilson was along for the ride, no pun intended. He got to grow. Who couldn't have won a Super Bowl with the Legion of Boom? I've seen football for 40 years. They're in the top 4 defenses I've ever seen. You could not pass on the Legion of Boom. And then they just came with the big physical monster of Marshawn Lynch running the football. They should have won back-to-back. And then we would be talking about him. The fact that they didn't give Marshawn Lynch in the goal line changes all the narrative.
Really does.
And who lost the game? Russell threw the interception.
Yeah. Well, they never should have thrown it anyway, but I hear what you're saying.
They never should have thrown it.
Yeah. You're not wrong there.
Landing spot is so important for the quarterback. I've seen it. Now, I actually think, and people are looking at the results, not the prospect. I think we're better at identifying players who have potential. But we put them in these situations that are untenable for success. And we throw them to the proverbial lions from day one. Like, honestly, gentlemen, do you think anyone's going to change New England's offense in 1 year if that's their depth chart at wide receiver?
Hell no.
So what are you doing to the quarterback?
You're dooming him to fail. Yeah.
What are you doing to the quarterback in New England? Destroying him. Who the hell is he going to throw to? Like, I'm literally asking.
No, really,
like, who the hell?
Mario Douglas, baby, Pop Douglas. Let's go. Like, you know what I'm saying? We got one guy.
Kendrick Bourne, right?
Kendrick Bourne. He just signed. Yeah, that could be fun.
I mean, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
I've now changed my philosophy. I would do what the Lions and what the Bears are doing. Build the offense, then drop in the quarterback.
Yeah.
That offensive line, too many people don't look at. I love their skilled players. They're beautiful. They're gorgeous. But you know why the Lions won? That goddamn offensive line is a freaking maul machine. Please. Jared Goff's a good quarterback. He's a fine quarterback. But, man, between all that, if you put Jaden Daniels in that Detroit offense right now with those playmakers, you don't think Jaden Daniels would be awesome?
No, he would be for sure. I like Jaden Daniels a lot anyway. But, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess then on that note then to kind of pivot, let's say Jaden Daniels goes number 2 to the Commanders. Is that the same kind of drop-in thing you're talking about like that where you've got Austin Eckler now and you've got Terry McLaurin and like, you know, is that going to be drop-in enough? Is it going to be good enough? Or does that mean Jaden Daniels might struggle for the first year because it's not enough?
It's not a disaster, but it's not a ready-made situation like Chicago. I will say this. Daniels still will have fantasy upside early.
There you go.
Because the uber rushing potential would change that in Washington. And he has just enough, just some pieces around him. All right, just some pieces. It's not a complete disaster. Now, let me go back to your original question. So I think we got to think, I actually think we're pretty good at identifying the players.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the situation they get dropped in. So Then this is what I like for fantasy. Rushing equity. And what I mean by that, what percentage of rushing yards did they get from their offense? As an example, Jaden Daniels had 44% of the LSU rushing yards last year. That's ridiculous. That's Lamar Jackson-ish. Let me show you. Let me look back at my chart. Lamar Jackson, his top year at, I got to get 49% of rushing at Louisville. Jaden Daniels is 44%. Then I like touchdown to interception ratio. I want a smart quarterback. If you're a smart quarterback and you don't turn the ball over, you will more than likely stay on the football field.
That's a fair point.
One of you gentlemen look up the touchdown to interception ratio of Justin Fields, because I bet you he has two problems, that and sacks. But Jaden Daniels has 89 touchdowns to 20 interceptions. I'm looking for a 3-to-1 ratio. He has like basically a 4.5-to-1 ratio. Those are two numbers that are really important to me because it shows intelligence as a passer, that I understand my role in the offense, and then the rushing is just a fantasy cheat code. We know that. And what was Justin Fields? Do you have the number? What's he been in Chicago?
In the NFL, which I don't know if it's not quite fair.
I don't.
But I'm saying it is interesting that you call that out, because in Chicago, Fields has 40 touchdowns and 30 interceptions.
That's
terrible.
Problem. That's
terrible. Yeah.
That's why they moved him. And then you throw in his sacks. He gets too many sacks.
But in college, Fields had 67 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, right? So significantly better in college. Yeah.
But that doesn't change his prospect.
Right.
He was a good prospect who has had poor coaching, I would argue, and limited help on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah. That's fair.
Let me ask you about another player, kind of tying into this whole discussion. JJ McCarthy, it seems like a pretty polarizing prospect right now. A lot of people don't like him in the fantasy realm. Some do. It's possible he could go into one of those ready-made situations in Minnesota. So I guess first my question is, what is your opinion on McCarthy as a prospect? And then what would you think if he goes to Minnesota?
I love him in Minnesota. He's my number 4 prospect at quarterback position, but he needs to sit for a year desperately. I don't want to see McCarthy till 2025.
So we'll get the Sam Darnold experience.
It's the Sam Darnold. You've got to play Sam Darnold or bring in another guy off the streets. But, man, you throw it. McCarthy's 20 years old. He was a true freshman. He's played his last 2 years for Michigan. Why would you throw him to the proverbial Lions right away? He's not going to know the speed of the NFL game. Yes, he has some athletic ability, which will bail him out in arm strength. But, man, I've seen too many David Carrs, too many Sam Bradfords. You can't throw him into these situations where they just get mauled. Because this is something I think we don't talk about. There is a psychological aspect of playing NFL quarterback. Patrick Mahomes will beat you psychologically with his confidence and he knows he can win the game in the fourth quarter. John Elway showed me that better than anyone.
Yep.
We'll be down by 10 points. We're going to win the damn game. I mean, that is – I've been watching Roger Staubach tape. I'm getting real weird in my old age. I go back. I'm watching old tape. Man, let me tell you, Roger Staubach was better than – I didn't like Roger Staubach as a kid. My dad and I disliked the Cowboys. I'm now watching him through the lens and trying to analyze him as a quarterback. Let me tell you, Roger Staubach was unfreaking believable. I mean, he was 20 years ahead of his time. Roger Staubach would be a better quarterback today than he was in the 70s. He is so far ahead of his time with his legs and mobility, and Tom Landry didn't know what to do with him. And Staubach just bailed him out all the time. That's a different story. McCarthy must sit. And why was Roger Staubach? He sat in the Navy for 5 years. Then he sat on the bench behind Craig Morton for 2 years. He was basically an old man by the time he got the starting position in Dallas. He was mature, he was militarily trained, and he understood leadership. McCarthy, you throw him out there right now, and you could have major problems. I think he has to sit. But I do love the ceiling and the potential of McCarthy because he has flashes that are absolutely brilliant on tape.
So that's what I was going to say. Like, I like his upside too. And more to Rocky's point, like your thoughts on him are kind of what I've heard. But again, let's say we just, for the sake of argument, let's assume Vikings, let's assume best landing spot, right? And again, I'm not going to say best landing spot is Chicago. Like, that's very unlikely that they take him, realistically.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah, but let's assume he goes to the Vikings and he lands what I would consider to be a good spot for him to start right away with a good team built around him with Addison, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. Right now, you got obviously the Justin Jefferson, right? Like, that's about as good as you can ask for in fantasy and dynasty. Where would you rank someone like JJ if he lands on that kind of team as a rookie? Like, knowing in your mind that the prospect might be better to sit, but in Dynasty, he's sitting on a gold mine there. Do you still think he's a top 20 quarterback, or do you feel like he's still a little rustier for you?
This is a great question.
Because I do think there's a possibility he goes to Minnesota. Like you said, like I think that could be the case. And we're all kind of sitting there with, man, everything lines up except for what I would consider his talent, which again, I'm not saying he's not talented, but his talent is a little raw. That's kind of where I'm at too. Yeah.
Experience. Guess what, Andrew? Experience matters.
Yeah.
It matters at the quarterback position.
More than most.
He doesn't have the experience. That matters. Repetitions in practice matter. Watching film matters. Game reps matter. But if he lands in Minnesota in a super flex, he's a top 10 pick. He's a top 10 pick in the first round.
I like that. Well, the other question then on that same kind of topic, what is if he goes to Minnesota, what does that do in your valuation of Justin Jefferson? Does that raise Justin Jefferson for you in Dynasty, or does it make him a little bit shakier because now you've added that potential downside of someone like JJ McCarthy to Jefferson's future? You know what I mean? Like, what does that do to everybody else on that team?
So this is an interesting factor because I think a young player like JJ is going to do one of two things. He's either going to be afraid to rip it to a guy like Justin, right? He might be a see it and throw it. I'm not sure how great his anticipatory throwing is yet because he's young and there's not a lot of it on tape, but it doesn't mean he can't do it. But I think Justin Jefferson is such the alpha male. There's a point where he would just look at McCarthy in the huddle and literally tell him, throw me the damn ball.
I'll be open, right? Yeah.
And I will save you, kid. Like, I won't let it be intercepted. The worst thing is it hits the ground. Because I do think he is a transcendent wide receiver. And at that point, even the young quarterback will just say, I've got to throw him the ball. Right there. Even Aiden O'Connell threw DeAndre, oh my God, my old man brain, Adams. He threw Adams the ball this year in certain games where Adams was getting frustrated. Just throw me the ball. So I think it would hurt him. Maybe he doesn't have the 1,700-yard ceiling. But could he get 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns? Yes.
Well, and I think that's the JJ to JJ. That narrative just sounds fun, right? Doesn't it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that just seems too obvious and too meant to be. Is kind of where I'm at on that. So the other angle I'll go with this then is, and maybe we can kind of leave it here for a minute, but who are you higher on than the market and who are you lower on? And I know we'll get into some of that maybe with our trade later on, but who is someone that you feel like is going underrated or that you feel like is not getting the love and respect they deserve in the rookie
class?
Let's
go away from the quarterback position because we've been talking. Is that all right? If
That's
we
fine,
go to
yeah.
the running back position, I'm going to give you my deep sleeper. All right, I'm going to go deep. This is one people should write down. It's Kamani Vidal at Troy. I have him at number 11. I'm usually a little reluctant to have G5 guys. That's why I don't have them higher in my rankings. I loved the film. The film was silly good. It was great. But he was playing at Troy, which means he probably didn't play against an NFL defensive lineman or linebacker. But then he went to the combine. Holy crap. He hit a home run. He hit every athletic benchmark that I'm looking for. He's got speed. He's got acceleration. He's got burst. So he's an NFL athlete who was playing at a lower level. Did I tell you he's 213 pounds?
Yeah.
At 5'8"?
Yeah. He's short, he's little, but he's stocky.
Dude, his BMI is 32.4. The BMI over 30 is really sticky.
Yeah.
Really sticky.
His RAS is 8.69. I'm looking up here because I'd never even heard of Kamani Vidal. I'm like, I don't know who this guy even is because, again, that's a deep one. You picked a good one. But, again, his 4.47 is a solid 40. I'm fine with that. Like, that's a terrific 40 time. And again, at Troy, no one ever heard of him. Yeah.
Dude, he's a 4.15 in the 20-yard shuttle.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, watch the film. He's got great feet. And here's the thing I like about him. He plays like Derrick Henry. I mean, he smacks people.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
He has 92 career receptions. He has 32% of the team's scrimmage yards. Those are incredible numbers. Now, I believe he'll be a rotational back. I think he like a better Jaylen Warren in Pittsburgh. He's good. Like, I really do believe this is going to sound, I feel like he's a Baltimore Raven. They're going to draft a guy like him to back up Derrick Henry. Who knows if Dobbins comes back? They got rid of Gus Edwards. I just feel like Kamani Vidal backing up Derrick Henry for a year or two and matching Lamar Jackson with the speed. Like, that is a really, like, I feel like that's a great spot to drop him in.
John, you got to stop. I'm going to throw up. As a Bengals fan, this is terrifying. I don't want any of this. This sounds horrible to me. Because if he is anything like a young Derrick Henry and built like this with this kind of score and that kind of speed, Jesus, that would be hell for me as a Bengals fan. I don't want that at all. That's a great one. Great deep pick. Yeah, I love it.
I have him at number 11 because of the G5. I'm only
right.
It just is a little more challenging. But if he got round 4 draft capital, like that means the NFL loves him, right? That's what it would mean. So I'm really good with Kamani Vidal. Now, let's see. Who can I tell you at the running back? No, let me go wide receiver. So that's a guy I love.
Gotcha. Yeah. Who's someone you're not a fan of as much as everyone else?
And you just mentioned this. I'll go back to your original question a while ago. Statistics. Athleticism matters. But the other stat I look is I do want what I call scrimmage yards dominator.
Okay.
What percentage of the offense did he earn from production? Kamani Vidal, I like the 30% benchmark. Kamani Vidal exceeds that. So that means the coaching staff trusted him enough and he was productive with the touches. There's not many backs who have like a 15 or 18% production profile, then go to the NFL and become the main guy.
Yeah.
Like the NFL, I read this from a scout probably 4 years ago. Scouts like to see that the player has done it. And what he meant by that was that he has earned 200 or more carries. Remember, the Bengals took Chase Brown. Chase Brown wasn't a uber athlete. But what did the Bengals like him? Same thing I did. He proved the workload. He was a good pass catcher. And he came out of a running game Illinois that match the pro style running game. Now, I don't think Chase Brown will be great, but he's in line for a 40% market share of the Bengals backfield.
Yeah, him
now
and
they
Zach
might
Moss.
go draft someone.
Yep.
But I think they like Chase Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, that he showed them. So that's important. Wide receiver. I'm going to tell you the guy I'm going to have all over the place because currently he's a third-round draft pick in Dynasty leagues. I might have 90% ownership if he's at that price. And no, people have fallen off of him. I don't care. I'm all in on Javon Baker, UCF. I am all in on Javon Baker. 6'1", 2'8". But man, here's what my model loves. What you said, statistics. I love receiving yards per team pass attempt. It's a sticky number. How many yards do they get every time the team throws the football?
Sure.
My benchmark is 2.5. So I'm looking for players with above 2.5.
Sure.
Baker has a 3.11.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Marvin Harrison Jr. has 3.22. It's a pretty nice bucket to be sitting in.
Well, that means his team leaned. Well, it means his team leaned on him. Yeah.
Yes. Let me give you a hint. Malik Neighbors is 4.2.
Jeez.
That is sick. Like that is literally off the charts sick. But we'll
that's
go back
insane.
to Javon Baker.
Yeah.
So when I plugged in the numbers, I was like, oh, I was like, I watched him and I did it. Like, he's very good, right? I get it. But like that just fireworks exploding when I saw that. Then I'm looking here. I love when these two numbers match. Javon Baker, 17.5 yards per reception. They're throwing him the ball and he's gaining yards. But here's why I know it's legit. His ADOT is 17.1.
Really?
They're throwing him the
deep
ball
balls.
deep,
Yeah.
and he's catching it. And that is sticky when you put those three together.
Yeah.
Now, what I said on the field, he is a talker. He is Terrell Owens, Chad Johnson talking.
Ocho Cinco, if you're watching live.
I knew you know the reference.
Yes.
When Javon Baker, I've said this all year, I would love him as my teammate. I would absolutely despise him as an opponent.
Yep.
Now, there are rumors that he's not easy in the locker room.
Sure.
But I don't let that know. This is why I have to have a model. I'm not surprised by those rumors of a player who plays with passion on the field. I've seen too many passionate players be successful. Remember John Randall of the Vikings? That guy would not shut up. Like opponents literally said for 35 minutes that John Randall was on the field, they wonder if he breathed. All he did was talk about your mama and insult you and destroy your girlfriend and get in your head psychologically. How much did Warren Sapp talk shit, excuse my language, on the field? Brett Favre talks about it all the time when Warren Sapp got him for a sack or he missed him. I have no problem. Now, he might fall. He might end up in the 4th round. I think I have a 2nd round grade. I'm hoping he goes in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. I'm all in on Javon Baker. Like everything in my model likes him. Everything in my model says this guy is the guy. He's an X. He's an outside. He's dominant. He's a home run hitter. He's physical. He's nasty. He plays like the alpha male. I love it. That's my guy.
What you were saying, those landing spots going to matter, right? So like
Oh,
landing, especially for receivers, right? So like
yes.
he's a great talent, great prospect, but where he goes might, like, again, if he goes to the Patriots, do you want him that much?
No, I don't want anyone. You want to know my nightmare? I literally woke up sweating. I had a dream the other night that Malik Neighbors went to New England.
Oh
And I
God, could you
didn't know
imagine?
what to do. Like
Bateman
I woke
throwing
up
to
and
Malik
I'm like,
Neighbors. Ugh.
oh my God, that is. And here's the thing: either Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors might go to New England, but that's a different story. For if they pass, they shouldn't. But
They shouldn't. And for the
They
sake
should.
of all of our sanity, I'm with you. I don't think we want to do that. Well, I know we've
No.
covered a lot of a variety of topics. I don't want to keep you too long, and we do still have some other things to talk about.
No, of course.
But I think too, I think we've covered a lot of stuff to look at some different metrics. You give us some really good nuggets and some really good advice on what is sticky. That's always good. And I know you've got your own podcast where we can listen to that in more detail. So thank you so much for dropping that knowledge on us. That was awesome. One thing we'll move into here real quick is the listener league updates. We did have a trade in one of our leagues this week that I thought was at least worth talking about because it's an interesting one to me. DJ2, we had Dynasty Eeyore, gave up Sam Howell and Josh Downs. And again, this is a 14-team Superflex league, tight end premium. Gave up Sam Howell and Josh Downs to the Laughing Lizards from Mike Evans and the 3.12. Rocky, you're in this league. Obviously, we're sharing this team. I think DJ2 is when we're not sharing, actually. But what did you see when this trade came across? And this was before Sam Howell was traded to the Seahawks, technically, or signed with the Seahawks, I guess. What are your thoughts on this one now when you saw this one come through?
I think it's funny because I'm not a huge Howell guy, but in a 14-teamer, I kind of feel like the value's on that side. And I love Mike Evans, and I think Mike Evans is going to score a ton of points this year. So I get why you would acquire Mike Evans at this price. But the upside is there's just a lot more upside on the other side. And I'm not a big Hal guy, but he was able to produce some fantasy points last year. He got sacked too much. He threw too many picks. Was not great from an NFL perspective. But maybe if you can clean some of that up, there could be something there. And I like Downs as well, too. He had a little stretch there where he looked really good. We'll have to see how he does with Richardson. You're basically in 1 or 2 years of Mike Evans, and at least one of these guys could be significant for a while. I think Mike Evans is going to be better than either of these guys ever is for the next year or two. But it could be some long-term assets, and that seems what this trade basically was. I don't know that Howell's going to start this year or anything, but yeah. I think there's a chance. I mean, Geno, to me, isn't super locked in. I mean, they didn't invest a ton of
they
money.
Gave him a contract, which says something, yes. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
but it's not like it's not a high-end contract or anything. So yeah. I think there's a chance, but I just think it's a really good trade, actually. Like just the from it clearly looks like a rebuild and someone contending. So I think it's pretty even. I would lean the other side.
What do you think, John? Are you on the same page there? Which side would you prefer?
I'm buying Sam Howell right now. He's a screaming buy from me. We were talking about situation. I think with Ron Rivera and what he had around him in Washington, while it looks good, I think the end result in that scheme and that coaching staff wasn't really overly beneficial. I thought Sam Howell, you're right. He made some mistakes. He took too many sacks. I agree totally with that. And at times he wanted to play hero ball. But I do believe Sam Howell is still younger than Bo Nix and Michael Penix. And he's got basically a full season now quarterback. He does show flashes. If I remember when he got benched, wasn't he leading the NFL in passing yards?
I think he was, yeah. Like, he had a hell of a year. He's 23, yeah.
Yeah, for fantasy, there's still juice to be squeezed out of Sam Howell. I think, again, I wouldn't mind Sam Howell sitting for a while, learning, thinking, getting ready for his next opportunity. we have seen quarterbacks who, when given a new environment, given a second chance, can succeed. I think this is a good opportunity for Howell. He's going to cost you almost nothing in Dynasty because he's probably someone's third quarterback. I don't think too many Dynasty owners went into the year with him as their top two. They might have been playing him in Superflex because he was so hot fantasy-wise, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe they had injuries. But he's probably their third quarterback. I'm looking to buy Sam Howell at this point in Superflex. He's got the legs. He does have to correct the mistakes. But I don't think his career is over, and I do think he'll get another chance to be successful in the NFL.
Interesting that you put it that way. So in your mind, then you would take the Sam Howell side because you're higher on Howell. It sounds like that's the side you would prefer. Now, I have what I would consider a really interesting and funny question. So 5 days before this trade occurred in DJ2, I made an almost identical trade in a 14-team league. It was the exact same trade, except there was no Sam Howell involved at all. So it was just Mike Evans for Josh Downs and the 3-1-2. So like it's the same pieces, just in a different rotation. So Josh Downs and the 3.12 or Mike Evans, which of those two would you prefer?
Okay, without context, because I do think it matters, Rob, but without context, I'm taking the Josh Downs and the 3-1-2 at this point because I think there's talent in this draft. You could get a good player at 3-1-2. And I'm very worried about Mike Evans just literally dropping off the map at any point.
He has to at some point, right? Yeah, like he can't do this forever. Yeah.
I mean, he might go out and get another a dirty 1,000 yards, right? Like he could have 75 receptions. It's a slow slog, right? He just creeps over. Yep. But eventually Father Time is victorious. So I think while you're getting's good, get something for Mike Evans.
Yeah, what do you think, Rocky? If that was the modification, it really is Downs or Evans, which would you prefer? And then the downside has the kicker.
With it making it Downs and Evans, I actually would probably then lean Evans. Father Time is going to catch up with him. I don't know that it's happening super quickly though. It's not like his game was built on speed and he's going to lose that step and just be, fall off the map because he can't outrun guys anymore. I just think he's just going to be, I think he's going to get those 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns for another couple of years. And as long as you're not completely rebuilding, I would prefer Evans, even though I like Downs long-term.
So in the context, just because it's similar, I know this is my trade, so I can talk about it. My context is I am pretty much a tear it down rebuild in this league. Like I got to start all the way over.
You have to have the Josh Downs side.
So that was my side. Yeah, I gave away Evans. I'm like, I got to start selling.
Yeah, I don't think the value is far off. I would just prefer Evans.
And honestly, like we were going back and forth on this one, and it was like Evans for Downs straight up, and I'm like, nah, I think Evans is going to outscore Downs. I'm with you, Rocky. I think Evans is probably still going to put up more points, but I think Downs has some potential long-term value. He's obviously younger, tied to a younger quarterback and a more stable position, like all this. So I'm like, well, give me a little kicker on top. And so he had the 312. I'm like, that's close enough. But I thought it was funny. Again, that was 5 days before this one. So then this trade comes through my inbox and I'm like, wait a minute, did I make this trade? Like is this what I got? Like I was so confused. I'm like, oh wait, no, different league. But it was like three of the same pieces just blew my mind. But anyway, yeah, I'm with you. I would rather have the Downs and Howell side in that case, because like what you guys said, I think Howell definitely has some upside in a 14-team super flex. You want to try to get those quarterbacks, and you didn't have to give one up. So kudos to you, Laughing Lizards, I guess, on that one.
See a record number? Wasn't there 66 quarterbacks or something like that who started games?
Yeah.
I think it was 64 or 60.
Howell's the top 66 quarterbacks available on the planet.
That's all it takes.
He's going to play at some point, just because let's just say Gino was winning. Injuries are such a disaster at the position. So yeah, I like Howell still very much.
No, I do too. All right.
Good memory, John. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
It's exactly 66.
Well done.
Yeah, I mean,
Love
he's
it.
going to get on the field. I mean,
You're not wrong. He'll get on the field more than I will. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll wrap it up tonight. Last segment is our classic Find Me a Trade. I'd be remiss if I didn't play the music because it's one of my favorites.
Find me a trade.
There we go. The one and only Brian Haar with the Find Me a Trade login logo, whatever your sound bite clip, what have you. I'll read through some of the settings, Rocky. Do you want to pull up the league? Are you able? I can do it if you can't, but I'll keep going. So this was submitted by Jason Real at Our Real People on Twitter. He's in, I think it's DJ2 with us. He submitted this league. It's the Degenerates Devi Dynasty FFL, a league that Rocky was until 6 weeks ago was in. So that's kind of interesting. We'll let you talk about the league a little maybe there, Rocky. But it is, again, it's a 16-team Devi league. So it's a very interesting roster and very interesting construction. But I figured when we have one of the best Devi college, rookie minds on the planet, I'm like, we got to get John Lobb to talk about a Devi league. It just made sense to me. So we got a 16-team Superflex PPR, half PPR additional for tight end, and 4-point passing touchdowns. Start 10. Again, 16-team start 10. QB, running back, 3 receiver, 1 tight end, 3 flex, and a super flex. And they're 30-man rosters. So, again, for a 16-team league, that gets pretty deep, even with Devi. Jason's picks, he's got the 104, 206, 309, and 416 in a Devi depleted. His thoughts were, I started off decent in this league and made a trade for Hopkins in the offseason to try to push for the title, but I ended up just missing the playoffs. I feel like my need is QB, but didn't know what to try and move to try and fill the hole to make a playoff push. Rocky, if you want to run through the league real quick, that would be awesome, and then we'll get to the trades.
Okay, yeah. On his roster, he has Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, and Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, along with Taylor Heineke. But that's pretty good QB room for a 16-team Superflex.
Yeah.
At running back, the big names are Saquon, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard. Also has Marshawn Lloyd from this year's rookie class coming to his roster this year. And some mostly backup guys beyond that. Khalil Herbert, Kenneth Gainwell, Miles Sanders in there. It's kind of weird. He's now a backup, but he pretty much is. And at wide receiver, he's got a lot of decent guys, but nothing great. Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, Mike Williams, Hopkins, Boyd, and Robert Woods. And then at tight end, Dalton Schultz, Pat Fryermuth, Hayden Hurst, and Tyler Higbee. And on his taxi squad, I guess these are Devi's, Emory Jones and Dominic Blaylock, wide receiver.
Yeah. So again, I think the interesting part is his comment reads like he needs a quarterback, and I think it's maybe because his team was submitted back in January. So back in January, there was some uncertainty about Kirk Cousins. There was some uncertainty about Aaron Rodgers. There's always been uncertainty about Taylor Heineke, but if, like you said it well, you got 3 starters in a 16-team Superflex. I think your quarterback room is pretty good. And Rocky, we'll go to your trade first. I know you were the one that had it on the sheet first, so to speak. But what trade did you come up with for our boy Jason here to help him out?
So
and again, as someone who's in the league, you were just in this league.
Yeah.
So I feel like you have some inside knowledge. That's why I wanted to start with you.
Yeah, and well, that's debatable because I was going to say the first thing I was looking at is possibly moving that 104 for as high end of receiver as you could get. I kind of want to upgrade his wide receiver room a little bit. I like his roster. It's not amazing, but a 16-team league, it's hard to get a stacked roster. So I think it's not too bad, especially like I said, I like Cousins and Mahomes at quarterback, especially. I like Schultz and Fryermuth at tight end, and I wanted to upgrade his receiver room a little bit. I don't mind having a little depth there too, especially in a 16-team league. Depth can matter even more. You need to start 3. He's got maybe 5 guys that are potentially startable, but there's a lot of question marks there. So that's what I was thinking, but I'm not really great on how to value the Devies, which is why I'm no longer in the league in the picks. So I wasn't sure how high-end you could go. So I didn't end up trying to find a specific guy, but maybe something you can try and shop around if you have a little better feel, Jason, than I do for what you might be able to get for that 104 pick. And we talked about this just before the show. just to give some context to this league, the Debbie they do is only 1 year eligible out. So like anybody in the 2025 class is eligible in the Debbie draft, but anyone beyond that is not. So that's what you'd be trading for, as well as they throw in any rookies that didn't get drafted in previous Debbie drafts. So that's kind of what's in the mix for there. So it's kind of like and I don't know enough a year out to know who's going to be the 104, a potential 104, even in 2025. But some people might, and you can certainly look up that information and kind of get an idea of what kind of prospect that might be. So maybe that'll help with gauging what kind of receiver you could get for that. But since I did not do that, the one I did was actually a specific player for player trade, which was Kenneth Walker to the team 2C for Nico Collins. And I'm a big Nico Collins guy. I know people were worried Houston's going to bring somebody in. I don't think they are. They have Nico and they have Tank Dell. They also, not that he's great, but they did just re-sign Noah Brown too, which kind of signals to me he had some nice games for him that they're probably feeling pretty good about receiver. They may draft a guy because it's a deep class, but I don't think it's going to be a significant guy. And I don't think anybody.
Schultz.
Yeah.
There's pass catchers there.
Yeah, and so I don't see that as a need. I know some people have talked about being worried that that's going to happen, and I just think his season. I know people know he did well. I just think it's underrated how well he did. Nico had a great year, and Kenneth Walker going to this team 2C. He looks like he's like just about to start coming out of a big rebuild. He's got tons of young guys. And he could maybe use the running back if he's trying to start competing. It's debatable because his receiver room actually after Nico is a bunch of rookies, so it might depend on how he feels about them. But even Walker could be an asset in 25, 26. So it's not like he has to be contending this year to take on Kenneth Walker. But he's a nice young player that a lot of people like. He also, by the way, if it matters, has Zach Charbonnet on the team, so he'd kind of have the backfield wrapped up.
Yep.
And like I said, he'd be losing Nico, and the rest of his receiver room is not great, except in terms of production we know. But he's getting Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze, so as well as A.D. Mitchell. So he's got a lot coming up to the main roster now. So I feel like maybe he'd be willing to part with Nico, get another young running back in there. He also has to pair with Bijan, who he also has. And have his backfield sewn up for years to come. Have these 3 great rookie receivers coming in. He's also got Lawrence and Anthony Richardson. He's young all over the place. So not that Nico's not young, but maybe he'd like to have the 2 high-end running backs there that he can roll with going forward and be willing to part with Nico. And like I said, I like having another guy for Monstar's receiving core. He would slot in. I think it's pretty much easily the best receiver on his team, and I think Jason has a shot at some contention, at least playoffs. If not high end, he's probably not one of the top 2 or 3 contenders. But like I said, in 16-team league, you never know. It's not like you got a lot of stacked teams.
You got to get real lucky. I will say this too. It's funny you mentioned kind of some of the things I was going to say, but you say how young this team is, and I would agree. He's got Quentin Johnston, Adonai Mitchell, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze. He's got Brock Bowers, Bijan Robinson, J.J. McCarthy, Anthony Richardson, Malik Willis. Like, this team is super young. Like, 2C definitely knows what's going on. And it's odd because Nico Collins might be expendable because of the depth. So that was a good pick. The other thing I thought was interesting is, again, mentioning how young this team is. It also has Julio Jones and Cooper Kupp, and you know what I mean? Like, there's some like, oh, that's CJ Beathard. You know what I mean? Like, even in a 16-teamer, that feels like a deep choice. But yeah, I think that's got some potential. I like it a lot. John, what do you think about that trade, or basically what Rocky was building there?
I think Rocky's heading in the right direction. I think, the dude has a very good roster and very young players. So I think Rocky's giving him a nice foundation. You can always tweak it. I think every owner, if Rocky is giving him the base and giving him the structure, if there's a piece or something he doesn't like, the owner can tweak it. Or maybe sometimes your trade partner wants to tweak it, right? There's always
but I think no trade is ever done right away. Yeah, it's always a back and forth, right?
Giving him the real good foundation and the structure, and then he can go from there and tweak it if he wants.
No, I like it. Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I'm at. And I'll just kind of get into mine real quick and let John finish with his killer at the end. Because I think it's a really interesting discussion point. But mine was sort of to back to Rocky's initial point. I think the weakest spot for you Monstars, for Jason, is that your receiver group just doesn't have a killer on it. And I think you're probably 3 trades or 4 trades away from that killer. I think you can try to do some moves to maybe move up and package up or something to get that. And so my trades would be more like smaller trades in a way. I would try to make some smaller moves to move toward that bigger one. But like we were talking about earlier, I think Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard are something I would be targeting. I'd be buying Spears and selling Pollard because I think a lot of people are looking at Pollard as the clear-cut starter and like, oh my gosh, he's going to take all the carries, and he's never done that before. And so I would be shocked if Pollard ends up being a top 20 running back. But I think a lot of people are valuing him as that. So that might be where you can move on. So my trades are something more along the lines of Tony Pollard for Marquise Brown and a pick. The Rice squad has Marquise Brown. He has no picks as of right now in 2024. So maybe like a 25 second, something like that. Or trade with 2C, the team that Rocky just mentioned, where you would trade Pollard for Quentin Johnson in a pick. Or Brian Robinson in a pick. Like that's kind of what I'd be trying to do, is to add some Devy assets in the future, but then also get a player with upside that might turn into something, because I don't know if you're really going to get a lot for Pollard. It depends. But my basic thought is try to see the best you can get for somebody like a Tony Pollard. I feel like he's the most expendable and probably overvalued player on your roster. That's probably who I'd try to move and kind of poke on some different people to see what you like and what you can get. Find a receiver that you like and see if you can go out there. I mean, Kenneth Walker for Nico Collins straight up isn't bad. Maybe there's something like a Tony Pollard and a receiver for Nico Collins, something like that, right? Same idea. That's kind of the move I would try to make, is upgrade at receiver and pivot out of your running back depth. Because I think you've got enough running back depth to make this team, more of a Monstar than it already is. I think you only
have to start one. Right?
I was just gonna say, I remember from we looked at, you only have to start one, the rest are flexes, and that's exactly where I was going to land. You still got Miles Sanders, who I think could still be a back you care about. You've obviously got Saquon Barkley. You've got Kenneth Walker, as we were talking about, Khalil Herbert. Like, you've got plenty of options on that one running back. I don't think you need all these running backs with a start one running back. I would rather have a receiver. It is a full PPR, so I'm fine moving Pollard in his full PPR value. Is, as alluring as that may be, somebody might give you a stud for him. You never know. And if you don't like the players I mentioned, that's great. Go find a player you do like with upside. And that's basically, like to what John said, that's the bones I'm thinking about. So I guess, John, what are you thinking about that trade? And then we'll get Rocky's opinion before we do yours.
I think all the trades are good offers. I think you're giving really good advice here. I'm not necessarily the best advisor on trades, but I think what you are often and how you're getting people to think.
Yes.
When I'm doing something like trades, it's about getting people to think about options and how. My brother's a salesman. I'm a teacher, if someone doesn't know. But my brother always talks about win-win. When you're in sales, you want to do a win-win. And what I think you're giving people right now is the structure of a win-win, right? Like, I think we've all been on a dynasty end where someone just gives you such a bad offer. Like, you're like, okay, you insulted me so badly, I can't even respond because it's not even in the ballpark of fairness. So I think it's very important what you're doing is offering a win-win from the start, and then you let people tweak and talk and open the conversation.
Yep, and that's really what this is. You're just throwing something out to see what clicks and what happens. Rocky, what do you think about those? I mean, I feel like both of ours are good bones, similarly built. I mean, there's really probably not a lot of discussion, but I'm just curious if you had any other thoughts.
Yeah, like John said, this segment has always kind of been about as much about the structure and the ideas of what we're doing as the specific traits we put out there. And I think we both kind of had the same idea, trying to get him a receiver or some other piece that can kind of bolster that lineup. So the only of the, and this I think was the secondary one you put on there. I'm just wondering if Pollard might be too old for 2C.
Well, that's a fair point. Yeah. He may not be wanting this trade. He may not want Pollard at all, right? And that's kind of where you don't know all the context, but that's again why these are bones. And maybe you don't go to 2C, you find someone else, right? That's definitely a fine idea.
Is Pollard 26? Is that about what he is?
I
think he came out late at Memphis. I don't think he was like a 3-year
26.
player.
Yep, 26 right now.
Yeah.
Yep. So then, John, what was your trade? I know as the Devi person, I wanted to finish on yours because I feel like it's maybe the most discussion or least discussion, depending on how we want to do this.
He will be 27 in a month, by the way.
Correct. He'll be 27 before the season, but he's 26 now. Good call. Yeah.
Well, once you told me it was a Debbie league, my spidey sense just tingled right away. So I said to myself, without knowing context, how could I improve my team in a Debbie league without really hurting my team immediately? So what I was thinking is I love to bet on wide receivers, early breakouts with physical size and with skills. So immediately dawned on me. Last year at this time, everyone knew about Marvin Harrison. He wasn't the guy you could trade for. The guy you could trade for last summer, and I have him in 4 Debbie leagues, was Malik Neighbors. I'm promoting him on all the teams. So immediately I have an idea. I said, I don't know if the Debbie community's figured this player out. It is wide receiver Tatoria McMillan of Arizona. If you have not seen Tatoria McMillan, and I'm not sure everyone has, he plays at Arizona. Let me just put they don't have the size. I think he's like 6'3", 210. If my memory serves, I thought on the stats page they would have his size. They don't have his size. As a true freshman 2 years ago, 39 catches, but here's where it gets juicy. 702 yards. So he averaged, as a true freshman, 18 yards per catch.
Whew.
Oh, yum, yum. 8 touchdowns. Okay, that's really impressive. Last year, it was wild. But because of Oregon, because of Washington, because of USC with Caleb, Arizona went way under the radar. They had one of the most exciting offenses in all college football last year. McMillan came back, 90 receptions as a true sophomore, 1,402 yards. So he came back averaging 15.6 and 10 touchdowns, 2,104 yards in 2 seasons, 129 receptions, averaging 16.3. If he's healthy, knock on wood, he's going to end his career with about 215 catches for well over 3,000 yards and probably over 30 touchdowns. I'm all in. He has a little Rome Odunze in him. I don't think he's as elite of a prospect as Rome Odunze. But, man, if you have not seen him play, go out, offer a second-round pick. Maybe let's do this. Offer a third, see if they bite.
Right.
If they don't, counter with a second. In my model and my film assessment right now, he's going to be a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL draft. And more importantly, he's an alpha hog. If you're looking
that all sounds great to me.
Yeah, because it would be hard to guarantee in the second round that you're getting an alpha hog at wide receiver. You might get lucky with the Amon-Ra St. Brown. You might. But I'd rather bank on a top 10 receiver the next year than me getting a receiver in the second or third round this year.
No, I love that. That's what we bring you on for, John. There's these nuggets you're dropping. This is great. I've never even heard of Tataroya McMillan. Like I've never even heard that name.
He is so good, dudes.
That's awesome.
He is so good. Did anyone get the size on him? Because I don't have the number in front of.
I did. It said 6'3" on Arizona's website. I never really know if I should trust.
I know he's probably 6'2".
Yeah, I always get a little nervous on that, right?
He's over 200, right?
So I got 6'5", 210 on 247. So and that's probably closer to accurate. So 6'5", 210 is pretty good.
You're probably looking at 6'4", 215
Right.
by the time he comes out.
Yeah, that is not bad. That is not bad.
Gentlemen, he is an outside boundary X receiver. I mean, you're going to hear steam about him over the summer. And if he plays as well as I project, everyone's going to be talking about him by Thanksgiving next year.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Tetaroa McMillan. I'm going to try that. That's going to be a fun one when he makes it in the NFL. I'm going to have to work on that. But thank you so much for that, John. That, again, one of many nuggets.
Andrew, you could always get away with T-Mac. That's his nickname on Wildcats.
Love it. Now I sound like I know what I'm talking about too, which is even better. But thank you so much, John. That was terrific. Tons of terrific knowledge there. Hopefully people listening, hopefully you learned some stuff and got some good actionable advice out of this. I think we did a really good job of covering a lot of what we wanted to cover. John, just before we get out of here and disconnect for the night, why don't you remind folks where they can find you and where all your stuff will be if they want to get more info?
Well, gentlemen, thanks for having me on. It's been a blast. My X account, I'm getting better. I used to always say the T word. It's the X account is Gridiron Skull 91. I could not afford the A and the R when I signed up over a decade ago. So it's Gridiron Skull 91. That's the year I graduated from grad school. People ask me why I picked 91. That's the year. That's how old I am. I got my master's in 1991. So that's where that comes from. And then please go to YouTube, look at our videos. Andrew mentioned it. Everything I've talked about, all the players are up right now. You can see the profiles, more in-depth analytical numbers. I think we have 24 players previewed right now. We got another 4. We record 4 players every Sunday for publishing late Sunday night. I think we're going to do 36 when it's all said and done. And then please go to playerprofiler.com right now, and you can check out all my written profiles with the statistical model in detail, and all the players are stacked up. So right now, there's 31 running backs, 32 wide receivers, 13 quarterbacks, all ranked in my statistical model. Of course, with my film study, my model might say this guy's 7, but I like him, so he's 8. You know, I do move it around. There's just Javon
as
Baker,
you should.
I have him.
You can't trust a computer to do your job. No, that's not what we do here. No, I love it. So again, thank you so much, John, for coming on. Rocky, is there anything you want to promote or talk about before we get out of here for this evening?
I don't think so.
Sounds good to me. All right. Well, make sure that you follow us at Dynasty Junkies. You can follow me at Andrew Hall FF. You can follow Rocky at Dynasty FF Addict. You get to follow Scott and Tommy when they're on, but we're not talking about their handles. They're not on tonight. Make sure that you subscribe, rate, and review to the DAP Network at DAP Network on YouTube. You can see us on Twitter at DAP_network. You can find the Trade Addicts on there. You can find the Fantasy Timeline, Get Real with Casey Kasem, all of those great shows that you're a fan of. Thanks to Jason for showing up in the chat on the night that we did his league. I love when that works out. And he submitted a thing here at the end that said, it does give me an idea. Maybe I can package something with Pollard or Walker to get Pickens. So, but again, he gets the idea. He's using our intelligence here to say, ooh, okay, that's not a bad angle. I love that. Thank you also to Austin Abbott, who showed up from Twitter and made some comments. And again, thank you so much to you, John, for coming out tonight. I'm sure you're going to have a busy month. We all do. But again, with that, I think it's the easiest way to put it. Junkies out.